I'm sure, like a lot of collectors, you've got stories about cleaning of coins. Anything you'd like to share about that?
Great question. What I did is I went for the one that was the shiniest. I mean, I didn't know about wear. I didn't know about condition. I went for the one that was the shiniest. So my Lincoln set was absolutely bright orange, AG to good coins that had been cleaned so harshly, and they were so worn they wouldn't stay in the holders. And so my solution to that was, I found that if I got some airplane glue and I put a dot of airplane glue right in the middle of the hole there in the holder, and then I put the coin in there, it would be stuck in there for good. So when I opened the page, they wouldn't fall out. But the tough part about it was had to get those dates exactly perpendicular. Otherwise, once you put them in, there was no changing them. They were glued in there forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been in this a long time, so why are you selling now?
You know, I look at this as I'm just like a temporary custodian. I'm not going to, I mean, I don't really own these coins. I mean, I'm the custodian of them. I mean, they're part of history. And I really should have been a history major in college because, you know, when I look at these coins, I think about what was going on in that time period, who held the coin. I mean, it really is history in your hand. And it's the numismatics, and I studied management and political science and so forth. And coins are, you know, really tell a story about what was going on at that time politically and monetarily of any country. I think they're fabulous, fabulous history, this sort of thing. And likewise, this is a treasure. And I don't own the treasure. I mean, I'm the custodian of it because, you know, eventually we're all going to get the dirt nap anyway. And so when you get the dirt nap, somebody else gets the coins. And the half-cent collection, the reason why I think that the driving force, two things. First of all, you can't collect everything. I eventually sold my Lincoln cent collection off, and I sold my Indian cent collection off. And I used to collect just about everything in the Red Book. But it gets, if you do a good job, then you really can't collect everything. And when I became a full-time dealer after retiring from the Army, I realized that I would buy collections from people, and so many collectors would not specialize. When anyone say, well, I collect everything, then that meant they had a, you know, maybe one or two good coins, and the rest of it was marginal material, you know, kind of junk. And so that if you specialize and really learn it, I mean, pick a series. It doesn't matter what it is, but learn the series and get the books and study it and get the best examples you can and learn about the die states and learn about all you can about that series. Well, so I specialized in the early coppers, and that included half cents, colonials, early date large cents, middle date large cents, and late date large cents. Well, collecting all the colonial varieties is not an easy task. I mean, I think I had 250 varieties of Connecticut's alone, and I realized this is insane. I can't do everything. You know, my library at home it only holds so many books, and you can't do it all. And so I started selling off my colonials, and then I realized, you know, what I really need to do with the half cents is, because I'd had so many collectors and so many clients that have been buying coins from me over the years, they came to me and they said, gee, when you sell your collection, I'd like to buy that one, or I want to buy that one, or I need this one for my collection, and so forth. And I realized I had 4 or 5 people wanting the same coin. And, you know, in this business, it is a business, but also you try to make friends. And if you start selling and picking and choosing who you're going to sell to, then, you know, if 5 people want the same coin, one guy's going to be a happy camper. The other 4 might be a little bit upset. So here I am, a full-time dealer, and people say, well, dealers came to me and said, well, why are you selling the coins in auction? Why do you sell them out of your case?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, because I'm going to make 4 people unhappy, the 4 that didn't get the coin. So I figured the fair way to do this, put it in auction, let everybody have a fair shot, and I'm putting it in the auction, and I'm going to sell it unreserved, and they'll bring what they bring. I mean, there's no games being played. There's no hidden agendas going on here. I mean, this is a collection that I own outright. There are no consignment pieces in it, and I'm going to sell the collection to whatever collector feels that he wants it the most. And, you know, the guy that wants the coin the most usually ends up with it.
Yeah. Why heritage?
Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, I like the people, and that's important to me. They're a good bunch of people, and I get along with them all. And they also have the resources to do a good job and disseminate the information to as many people as possible. I mean, if you really want to know the true value of a coin, you got to at least have the people know about the coin is for sale.
Mm-hmm.
And with Heritage, and they've got their use of the internet, they can do that pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got a wonderful cataloging system and an art department that can put that together. And they've got great catalogers so that it's going to be an accurate description of the coins.
Mm-hmm.
And with copper, you know, they're great a little more conservative than they are with many other type series of U.S. coinage. And so you kind of have to have a little bit of a specialty there. And there's 3 or 4 people that can do it, and they're all good. They're all excellent. But I think that when it comes right down to it, Heritage will probably be best for my needs.
Speaking of grading, do you want to address EAC grading?
Well, the EAC grade is you undergrade the coin, then you overprice it.
Well, that's briefly summed up. Yeah.
That's EAC grading.
Okay.
You know, it could be in a holder as an A. You call it a 3 and you want 60 money. That's pretty much EAC grading.
Okay.
But there is no such thing as EAC. It's a collection of guys that collect coins. And there might be 3 or 4, I call them the anointed, that say, this is my grade. And everybody goes, ooh, that's their grade, right?
Right.
But when it comes right down to it, you know, it really is an opinion, and even certified coins that have added a lot of legitimacy to our, you know, the coin business, which I think is a very healthy thing.
Absolutely.
It's still a very subjective thing, and you can get different grades. They had good days, bad days, and it's not an exact science. Everybody knows that. But what EAC grading does is they take the sharpness grade of a coin, and then they subtract off any of the defects that would lower that so-called sharpness or commercial grade or the ANA standard or what have you. So they net grade the coin. So for instance, if you had a coin that was an almost uncirculated, but it had a rim ding and a scratch, then they will drop that coin down to a lower level. Now there's where you get the inconsistencies. Is what do you consider the most distracting thing? Is it porosity? Is it a scratch? Is it a rim ding? I mean, there are no perfect coppers. I mean, you know, it's a soft metal, highly volatile, very susceptible to the elements. And if you get a little bit of damage on the coin, which is typical, I mean, if you don't have damage, it's probably counterfeit. So there's even the very best coins that are out there, and the highest graded examples, there's certain little defects and marks. Well, what is most distracting to one person may be a 10-point deduction. Another person, it might be a 2-point deduction. Everybody can grade a mint state coin. That's a no-brainer. That's easy to do.
Right.
But when they have defects and then come up with a grade, that's where you have the disparities, I should say, between the EAC grading and the regular commercial grading.
The level that you collect at, you could just as easily buy silver or gold. Why did you decide to specialize in copper?
I think it is the most challenging of all the U.S. series, and the reason being is because the metal itself is volatile. It's very simple to the elements. It's not as strong and tough as silver, and it was the people's money. This is how you made change for a chicken. You know, Eric Newman, one of the great numismatists of all time. I went to a lecture he did one time, and he was talking about copper coinage and colonial coinage and early coppers, and this is how you made change for a chicken. You know, you had a $5 gold piece in 1798. You know, that didn't get passed around very much. That's a lot of money.
Buy a lot of chickens.
That's buy a lot of chickens. But you know, when you went to the market and so forth, how did you get change? Well, this is how people made change. And they made the half cents clear up to 1857 because they were afraid of inflationary pressures if they took the half cent. And the average little guy would be forced to pay more than he needed to be. Kind of like it is today.
Right.
You know, history just repeats itself. They want to get rid of the penny today.
Right.
And, you know, there's no more going to be, you know, your gas is not going to be 93 cents, $2.93 a gallon or whatever it may be today. they're going to round up to the nearest nickel. So everything's going to go up another nickel. You know, it's not going to be, you know, it's going to be more expensive for everybody. Postage will not be 41 cents for first class stamp. It'll be 45 cents.
Yeah.
They won't round down.
Yeah.
So even if they get rid of the penny, it'll still be inflationary even today. But in those days, a half a cent and a 1 cent was a big deal. So these half pennies were a big deal, and they don't get the respect that large cents get.
Why do half cents not get the respect that large cents do?
Well, because there's fewer years they produced them, and some part of the years were just proofs only, and they're smaller. They don't have the weight that a large cent does, and there's not as many dice, not as many varieties. You know, I think a half cent collection, I think I might have 120 pieces, 130 pieces, I'm not sure, is pretty complete. I mean, there's missing 2 or 3 different, but not too many. Whereas a large cent collection, to get them all, just in the early dates, there's 295. And if you got the NCs added to it, it's 325 probably. And that's a lot of coins to collect.
Yeah, it is.
And whereas half cents, you can do a date set, and half cents a lot easier. And, you know, half cents are out there, but I don't understand something. Even though I took quite a bit of economics in school, international economics in grad school and so forth, but, you know, they're very scarce, half cents. Very, very scarce. There are probably more 1909 SVDB Lincoln cents survived than all the half cents of all the years combined.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they made 400,000 9 SVDBs, and they probably 350,000 survived, because people, it was a new coin, and they all knew it was rare when they made it, so they got kept. Whereas half cents, you know, you can still buy a half cent out there. More of the common years, you can probably buy them for $25 to $50. Well, you can't buy a 9 SVDB.
So you think that they're still undervalued?
Oh, way undervalued. Way, and they're 100 times more scarce than most of the stuff. And the reason why is because there's not a lot of people who collect them. They're hard to find. They're not expensive. And you know, there's 2 rules to that economics graph. There's a supply and demand. Supply of half cents, not very many. I mean, you can go to some coin shows and walk through the entire bourse and not find a half cent. There won't be one out there for sale. But you'll be able to find some 9 SVDBs.
Oh, yeah. You're a collector and a dealer. How do you feel about cherry picking?
You mean going through a collection and finding just one coin out of there and then buying it and all that kind of stuff? Well,
I would think as a dealer you would not be fond of that.
Listen, as a dealer, I have been cherry picked a lot. And everybody thinks, oh, dealers know everything. Hey, we do not know everything. Plus, there's so much going across the table. I mean, even large organizations like Heritage, I mean, you get picked off all the time. Sure. I mean, they don't mean to do it, but they just don't have time to go through every coin and every deal. They're even in the major auctions and so forth that if the guys are sharp and knowledge is king, they can get picked. But if a dealer picks off a collector, that's a different thing. There might be, you know, which I've never understood that double ethics. I've mismarked coins before by mistake and been picked off, but that's okay. But if I bought a coin from a collector and, you know, misrepresented what it was or didn't tell him the full disclosure on the thing, some dealers would think that'd be okay. I would have a problem with that. I think that's kind of unethical.
All right.
You know, and ethics are kind of important to me.
Sure.
You know, that's why we don't deal in certain types of material, because I don't think it's ethical.
Okay.
So I try to be as ethical as you can. You don't have to be. This business is a lot of fun. It's a great business. It's exciting and so forth. There's certain little parts about it I'm not too crazy about, but you know, now and then people get robbed. I don't like that part.
Yeah, well.
But, you know, but as far as the coins themselves and the history in your hand and all that, it's terrific. And there's some great people who collect coins. Wonderful people who collect them.
Tell me about your 1796.
Well, I've had 4 96s in my collection.
Really?
And the way I do it is that and a lot of people say, well, you can't be a collector and a dealer. Well, I totally disagree.
Mm-hmm.
My mode of operation is when I buy a collection, and if it had half cents in it, I'm going to take those half cents and I'm going to compare them with what I have in my collection. And if it's better than what I have, then I'm going to take that coin and put it in my collection. I'm going to remove the coin out of my collection, and I'm going to offer that to another collector.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, I can kind of share the wealth with them, let them have the joy of collecting it. Mm-hmm. And I've had actually 4 different 96s that I've upgraded. Mm-hmm. I think I've owned 8 altogether, but 4 didn't make the grade, and I just sold those immediately. Mm-hmm. And 4 others. So there's 3 other people out there walking around with a coin that was in my collection. Mm-hmm. And there'll be a 4th, the one who buys the one that's currently in there.
What about your 1802?
I love that coin because a coin that these dies were made by hand, mm-hmm. and you get a coin that these guys are I can just see the boss coming down there and say, all right, we got to change the dies out. It's December, we want to start making 1802s. When guy says, this die is still working. I don't know if I want to change it or not. So they get their engraving tool and they just make the O a 2 and off to the races they go. And that's mm-hmm. what's kind of fun about these early copper dies. A lot of overdates. And it wasn't a min-air. That was intentional. I mean, those engravers, mm-hmm. They took the trail of least resistance, and they didn't want to make a whole new die when they could just change the letter or something
right.
like that. And so that's what they did. Right. So that's what's kind of fun about the 1802.
In your collection of half cents, what is the most difficult coin to part with? And as a follow-up, is that also your favorite coin? Well,
they're not the most valuable, but they're very interesting, and that is the spiked chin. Mm-hmm. When I first saw my first spiked chin, I thought, that's kind of a neat coin, right. because there's a die break, and Liberty under the chin had a big spike coming out, and then also her tongue was sticking out too, mm-hmm. which I thought that is kind of a neat looking coin. Yeah. Well, so I started collecting those, and then I noticed that on the back side of them that there was some cuds, and a cud occurs when the die gets worn and it fills in, and eventually the die breaks. I mean, you have to think of coin minting process in reverse, kind of like a negative of a photograph. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so these things would be, they snap them out, and so this die progression continued. So I started collecting those, and so I ended up with a lot of different die states of the spiked chin because of that reason.
I see that you have 16 die states of the C2 spiked chin. Why does anybody need 16 die states?
Why? Why not? I mean, that's an obvious question. Why not have 16 different varieties? I mean, first of all, you can lay them all out there, and you can say, there's a brand new pristine die right here, and now look here at the other end of the 16. The die's about ready to break in half. I mean, it was pretty close, and the only thing that'd be cooler than the die state I had at the end of it would be where you had a coin that was in half, and they probably wouldn't let that go into circulation, right. or it wouldn't make it. But where the die actually broke in 2. But I don't know. But I think it's very, very fun to do, and it's an exciting thing to do. And you know what? It makes it an opportunity because not all those die states I have, are pristine examples that are going to cost a lot of money. There's coins in this cell of mine that the average guy. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised some of these coins didn't go for $50. Mm-hmm. I mean, they don't have to spend $200,000 to get a coin out of this collection. They can spend whatever they want because there's something there for everybody. And if you collect die states, there's a coin there for everybody.
I was once told that there's a fine line between collecting and obsession. Where do you fall in that?
Yeah, I think in early coppers. Now, it may hold true for some of the other series, but in early coppers, I think it's exemplified by, first of all, a guy collects type. So he says, all right, I need one of each head style. Mm-hmm. I need a drape bust. I need a Liberty cap, I need a turban head, I need a classic head, whatever. He's going to get one. And I think in half cents you can probably do it with 5, you might do it with 7. Depends on what you want to call those different dies and types. And they do that, and then they use the Red Book a lot of the time to do this.
All right.
And Ken Brissett is a good friend of mine. We've talked about this before. Well, what eventually then happens, the guy says, you know what? I think I'm going to collect the years. So then they collect the years. Okay? And then if they get really weird, they want to collect the dies because, there might be on some years 1 die, some years there might be 13 dies. I think there is 13 in one of the years of the half cents. And so anyway, there's 13 different dies for that very year. They want one of each of those dies. And now I call it the terminal state of collecting. That's where you are just about ready to go to the funny farm. And that is when you get the die states within that die. And I guess that's the case of the C2. So in other words, yes, I might have been terminal case with that particular, no hope for me beyond that,
There are several notable names associated with pedigrees in your collection. Would you like to share some stories or insights about some of the major collectors? Some people like Dr. Wallace Lee.
Yeah, great guy, and he bought coins from me, and he sold me coins, and he had a wonderful little collection there. Roger Cohen, of course, he wrote the book on the little sisters that don't get respect, basically, which is the Cohen way of cataloging all the different dies, and so and I became close to Walter when I was back as a student at the National War College. I had been selected as one of the Army reps to go to the National War College. It's a year graduate study on national security management. And I bought a little condominium in Georgetown, and Roger, he collected large cents and half cents. And he would come down on Sunday morning sometime, and I'd have the day off, and I'd call him, and we'd get together. He'd come down there, and I would get some bagels and put them in my toaster. And we'd sit there and drink coffee and eat bagels, and we'd compare half cents back and forth. Not like a whist match. A whist match is where you compare each coin with another one, and then you score them and all that. But we just look at different varieties and stuff. And he had a lot of duplicates, and so he'd swap out some of the coins with me. His collection, of course, was a marvelous collection. And the thing I remember most unusual about it is he had his entire collection in a towel.
A towel?
A towel. He took the towel and he'd put it on the table, and he would put the coins in by each year, by the different. It looked like a Christmas tree, and then they would all be laid out there together. Then when he'd pack them up, so he'd undo the towel, and then they would all be there on the table. And then when he'd pack them up, he'd roll the towel the width of each coin, and they'd all be rolled up like this, see? And then he'd get them all together, and then it'd be like a big long sausage, and he'd just bend it over and put a string around it, and that's how he'd carry his collection.
Oh my, really?
Oh yeah, it was unbelievable. And and then he'd come in and he'd undo the towel, and anyone who ever worked with and was sat down with Roger knows the story about the towel, but that's not in the book.
No, I suspect not.
That's how he'd carry his coins around in a towel.
I think Roger was fairly bitter after Breen published his book on half cents. You know anything about that?
He never said anything about Breen's book, but he did talk about price guides, and which I think is pretty funny. I'm one of the contributors of the Red Book, and I contribute to some of the other price guides and stuff. They call me and they say, what are you currently selling? They don't need to do that thing. If you go on my website, probably figure out what I'm selling the coins for. Any of the coins that I have in my business. But Walter said something very interesting. He said, those that make price guides that tend to take coins that they have that are common and overprice them. And coins that are truly rare, that they wish to acquire, they underprice.
Hmm.
I don't know, but I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
That was a great Roger Cohen quote
Yeah.
on price guides.
What about Dr. Robert Shalowitz?
Yeah, Bob, the good guy, still, he's around and so forth, and a pretty knowledgeable guy. He collects he's a real numismatist. He has a wide knowledge of all kinds of stuff. He's a pretty good doctor, I understand. I've never been to him,
Yeah.
but he's had a lot of coins pass through his hands. He and Dennis Loring both. I think that just about every early copper they've had their fingers on it at one time or another.
Yeah. Stephen Fisher?
Steve Fisher out of West Virginia. He's a good old boy. Very bright guy. He's had some marvelous, marvelous coins, and I think he also sets coins aside for himself in his collection. It's not such a dumb idea if you're a coin dealer, if you're knowledgeable in this, to set certain coins aside for, rainy days or what have you, or retirement. It's interesting. I see a lot of people who, I call them skyrockets. They come in, they're going to invest in coins. They read in the magazine where you can make a lot of money in coins.
Sure.
And they're starbursts. I mean, they just shoot right up there. They get a bunch of coins, and bam, they're gone. You never hear from them and see them again.
Right.
The great collections take years and years and years to collect. And a lot of the coins that I'm selling, I bought at different auctions over the years. And keep in mind is that I have a little advantage over an average collector, and that I was able to always sell my duplicates because I have my own business, and the ones that I didn't keep in my first collection. Now, another point is interesting about coppers. Not every coin that is in my collection that I kept was the highest grade. I kept certain coins because I liked the way they look, certain appeal. Yeah. It's kind of like the Miss America pageants, Every year, my wife and I, we look at that thing. I pick out the 4 or 5 I think are the prettiest girls. They never make it to the top 10. And she picks them out, and I'm laughing. They say, oh, they're terrible. And they'll always win. And I don't quite understand it. But it's a matter of taste and preferences, I think.
What about J.R. Frankenfield, who also collects visits to county seats throughout the country?
Yeah. Yeah, great guy. Yeah. Great guy. Some of my earliest auctions I went to, he was always there, and he was always willing to share information. He was, they always tell, this is what this story is on this coin, and he pretty much disclosed all he knew about something. And a lot of times people are kind of cagey about certain things, like a poker game sometimes in these auctions. And I admit I'm part of that, watching what's going on like everybody else. But JR was pretty open about everything, and he a great guy. I liked him a lot. Yeah, he was a pretty good guy. I remember one of the earlier auctions that I was at, I sat next to a guy by the name of Walter Breen. This guy was sitting in a Hawaiian shirt, and he had his shoes on, and I thought he was a homeless guy. And he was talking to himself during the whole auction. And and I was sitting next to him, and I think it was Robbie Brown's first sale. And he said, oh, that's ridiculous price. And, I'd buy a coin, another guy would buy a coin. Say, you paid too much, that guy paid too much, and all this kind of stuff. About a year later, I would have bought every single coin out of that catalog at the price they went for. And I figured out that when you buy coins at auction, generally you're paying next year's price. So if you're going to hold the coin for 5 years or 10 years, what does it matter if you bought it this year or next year?
Right.
It doesn't really matter. So,
Is there anything else that you'd like to discuss that we haven't covered?
Well, I think that there's this business has really changed, and the hobby has changed in that there used to be a big separation between dealers and collectors, and I think that line is really blurred now. And I think that there's a lot of collectors who sell off coins using the internet, using eBay, selling them back to dealers, trading off duplicates. And I recommend people when they're doing their collections, I say, you know, you need to take and you know, a good rose bush does well when it's pruned. And you got to do the same with your collection. You can't keep everything you buy. You've got to continually sell it off. And it'll make you a better buyer in the long run, because you realize sometimes you pay more than you should have. And if you do, you want to get rid of those mistakes as quickly as possible. And you want to get, of course, the best example you can find. But in coppers, you're going to have to make some compromise. I mean, you know, there's some of these coins are going to be porous. Some are going to have corrosion. They're going to have scratches, initials, graffiti, all kinds of stuff, holes. I mean, you know, I've had every one of those kind of coins in my collection, and that's different. I mean, you know, and the thing is fun about early coppers, half cents especially. If a collector came to me and he said, I'd like to have a set of Morgan dollars, I could say to him, what grade do you want? He could say, I want MS-62 or MS-63. Okay, fine. What holder do you want? I want PCGS, I want NGC, I want 8X, whatever. Okay, fine. All right. Give me 60 days, and I'll have every one of them for you. Every single one he wants. Just write the check. It's a matter of writing a check.
Right.
Now, if a guy came to me and he said, I want a complete set of half cents. I don't care what it costs me. I'd say, well, first of all, it's not available. And it doesn't matter the price, because some of the people that have these coins, the money isn't there. That they collect because they like to collect.
Right.
You know, and sometimes the only way you can get the collection is from Honolulu Bill. You know, that's the guy that marries their wife after they die. He's in Hawaii. And he ends up with the collection. He'll sell you the coins, but the guy that owned the coins, he's not going to sell them to you. So in other words, with early coppers, it's not a matter of writing a check. It's a matter of the hunt. And you really have to hunt these things. And it takes years and years and years. It's not a matter of money. And it's just not a rich man's game, because a lot of these things can still be acquired. And you know, yes, they're expensive, but a lot of them I acquired and they were not expensive. And some of the coins that I have in my collection will not be high-priced coins. Some will be. Yeah.
What do you want your numismatic legacy to be?
You know, I don't know if I really have a real desire for, you know, a legacy. I mean, I already have a big enough ego. I don't need to have it in coins. I mean, you know, good heavens. You know, I was probably the youngest colonel. I went into the Army as a private, and I was a full colonel by the time I was 39. And I stalled there. I was when I retired out of the Pentagon. I was probably one of the most senior colonels in the whole Army. I had been selected for brigadier general, and I was in special forces, so there was always some sort of investigation going on about whatever we were doing, and that kind of holds up your rank progression sometimes. And I wasn't enamored by all that kind of stuff anyway. Whenever I saw an officer with a lot of medals and stuff, I always thought, you know, he should be doing his job, not trying to get medals. Now, the enlisted guys, I'd give them medals left and right, but, you know, every medal I got in the military, I didn't earn, and every time I earned one, I never got one. So that's kind of how it works. I guess it all comes out in the wash. But as far as a legacy goes, oh, I tell you, I don't think I have a great desire to have a legacy in coins. Just that, you know, great. If I had a great time collecting this coin, and whoever ends up with it, I hope they have a great time and enjoy the coin. And take a few minutes and look at it and realize it's gone through a lot of hands. Some of the pedigrees are pretty good, and you know, and some of those coins, I mean, I picture Roger Cohen and I sitting there drinking coffee, and you know, he's gone. Someday I'll be gone. And maybe the guy said, you know, I knew that guy once that collected this coin, and, you know, I liked him or I didn't like him. Hopefully he liked me, but whatever, you know. Legacy, that's a tough question.